Welcome to Millionaire Love Stories, where love and heartbreak collide in dramatic twists that will grip your heart. Today's story reveals the resilience of a mother who endures unimaginable hardship on the streets, only to come face to face with her wealthy former lover. When Emily Carter, homeless with twins, is recognized by millionaire Ethan Montgomery, their lives intertwine in a tale of redemption, sacrifice, and hope. Can they overcome their painful past and build a future together? Stay tuned. This is a story you'll never forget. Emily Carter, a homeless single mother of twins, is thrust into a whirlwind of emotions and memories when she encounters Ethan Montgomery, her first love and a wealthy businessman. With her children's safety on the line, she struggles to reconcile the man who abandoned her years ago with the one now offering help. As they navigate past betrayals, financial hardship, and an unexpected legal battle against the twins' biological father, Ethan and Emily confront their deepest fears, rediscovering a love that had never truly faded. Their journey proves that no matter how broken the past, the unbreakable strength of a mother's love and the power of redemption can create a family stronger than ever before. Welcome to Millionaire Love Stories, where love and heartbreak collide in dramatic twists that will grip your heart. Today's story reveals the resilience of a mother who endures unimaginable hardship on the streets, only to come face to face with her wealthy former lover. When Emily Carter, homeless with twins, is recognized by millionaire Ethan Montgomery, their lives intertwine in a tale of redemption, sacrifice, and hope. Can they overcome their painful past and build a future together? Stay tuned. This is a story you'll never forget. Hello everyone, I'm the narrator. Today, I bring you a millionaire love story. A love that rises above all challenges, where hearts find each other in a world of luxury. True wealth isn't just money. It's love that lasts. Do you believe in destined love? If so, like, share, comment, and subscribe to Millionaire Love Stories for more heart-touching stories. Now, let's step into this story together. Millionaire sees a homeless woman with twins, then recognizes his first love, the unbreakable strength of a mother. Opening, the harsh reality of life on the streets. The city was alive with its usual buzz, neon lights flickered against the cold night sky. The chatter of people leaving high-end restaurants filled the air, and the occasional honk from impatient drivers echoed through the streets. But for Emily Carter, none of it mattered. She sat on a worn-out piece of cardboard, curled up against the side of a closed storefront, shielding her twin daughters, Lily and Sophie, from the bitter winter wind. Her body trembled from the cold, but she held them close, pulling the thin, tattered blanket over their small bodies. Her coat, once a deep burgundy, had faded into an unrecognizable shade, patches of fabric barely holding together. Her boots, scuffed and worn, could no longer keep out the freezing chill that seeped through the soles. Still, she remained still, her arms wrapped protectively around her girls, whispering soft words of comfort despite the ache in her empty stomach. "Mama, I'm hungry," Sophie murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat, pressing a kiss against Sophie's forehead. "I know, sweetheart, just a little longer." "Okay," she said, her voice gentle, though her heart shattered with guilt. Lily shifted slightly in her sleep, her tiny fingers clutching onto Emily's sweater. At only 4 years old, the twins had already seen more hardship than most children should ever know. Every day was a struggle, finding enough food, staying warm, avoiding the dangers that lurked in the city at night. But Emily refused to give up. No matter how brutal life became, she would endure it for them. People passed by, their eyes avoiding hers. Some quickened their steps, some turned their heads away as if the sight of her and her daughters was an inconvenience. Others threw her glances filled with silent judgment, their expressions screaming, "How did you let yourself end up here?" But none of them stopped. None of them cared, until a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Emily paid no attention at first. Luxury cars were a common sight in the city, their tinted windows shielding the elite from having to acknowledge the existence of people like her. But then, the door opened, and a tall figure stepped out, the crisp sound of expensive leather shoes meeting the pavement making her instinctively tighten her hold on her daughters. "Emily?" Her breath caught in her throat. That voice. Slowly, she lifted her head, her tired blue eyes meeting the intense gaze of the man standing before her. The city lights reflected in his dark brown eyes. Once she had known so well. Time had sculpted his features into something sharper, more refined. His tailored suit spoke of success, of a life filled with comfort and security. But despite the years, she recognized him instantly. Ethan Montgomery, her first love, the man who had once meant everything to her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with disbelief. With memories long buried yet never truly forgotten, Ethan's gaze drifted from her to the two small girls huddled in her embrace. His eyes widened, his expression shifting from shock to something else, something almost pained. Emily forced herself to look away. She didn't need his pity. She had learned long ago that expecting kindness only led to disappointment. "You shouldn't be here," she muttered, adjusting the blanket around Lily and Sophie as if that would shield them from whatever storm was about to come. "Emily, what happened?" Ethan's voice was softer now, laced with concern. "Why are you out here like this?" She let out a bitter chuckle, though there was no humor in it. "Life happened, Ethan." He took a cautious step closer. But she tensed. "Let me help you," he said. "You and—" He hesitated, glancing at the girls, realization dawning in his eyes. "Are they?" "They're mine," she said quickly, cutting off whatever thought was forming in his mind. "And we don't need your help." Sophie stirred in her sleep, letting out a soft whimper, her tiny body shivering. Emily bit her lip, her resolve wavering. She could endure anything, but her daughters, they deserved better than this. Still, the idea of accepting help from Ethan Montgomery, the man who had walked away from her all those years ago, felt like a betrayal to the walls she had built around herself. Ethan must have noticed her hesitation because he took off his coat and crouched down, draping it over the three of them. "Please, Emily, if not for yourself, then for them, let me take you somewhere warm. Just for tonight." She wanted to refuse. She wanted to tell him to walk away, to pretend he had never seen her like this. But then Lily coughed, her small frame trembling against Emily's chest. And she knew she couldn't let pride get in the way of what was best for her daughters. With a heavy heart, she nodded. Ethan extended his hand, but she ignored it, carefully lifting Lily and Sophie into her arms instead. She followed him to the waiting car, her steps slow, hesitant. As she settled into the warmth of the leather seats, she felt an overwhelming mix of emotions, fear, exhaustion, and something she couldn't quite place. She glanced at Ethan, who was watching her with unreadable eyes. What does he want? Why now? After all these years? As the car pulled away from the curb, Emily tightened her hold on her daughters, silently vowing that no matter what happened next, she would not let history repeat itself. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. Session 1. A fateful encounter on a cold winter night. Ethan Montgomery had never expected to hear that voice again. Not after all these years. Not in a situation like this. Yet, as he stepped out of his sleek black Mercedes and into the bitter cold, his breath caught in his throat. "Emily?" The name fell from his lips like a whisper, barely audible over the city's chaos. But it was enough. The frail woman, wrapped in a tattered coat, clutching two small children to her chest, stiffened at the sound of it. Slowly, she turned, her tired, hollow eyes meeting his. A storm of emotions crashed inside Emily as she recognized the man standing before her. Ethan Montgomery, her first love, the man she had once dreamed of forever with, was now looking at her with a mixture of shock, pity, and something else she couldn't quite place. Emily tightened her arms around Lily and Sophie, as if shielding them from the past that had suddenly materialized before her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to meet his gaze, her expression unreadable. Ethan took a hesitant step forward. "Emily, it's really you." She swallowed hard, willing herself to stay composed. "It doesn't matter," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just go." But Ethan wasn't about to walk away. Not after what he had just witnessed. Moments ago, he had been on his way home from a business dinner when he had noticed a small commotion on the sidewalk. A couple of teenagers had been laughing cruelly, throwing insults at a homeless woman and her children. One of them had kicked a cardboard sign near her feet, sending a few meager coins scattering onto the icy pavement. Ethan had felt an unfamiliar rage boil within him at the sight. He had told his driver to pull over, intending to put a stop to it. But when he saw the woman's face, time seemed to freeze. "Emily." Now, standing in front of her. He could barely process it. The woman he had once loved was living on the streets, clutching two little girls who, his breath hitched, had her eyes. He hesitated, not knowing where to begin. "Emily, what happened to you?" She let out a hollow laugh, void of humor. "Life happened, Ethan. Now, please, just leave." Her words sliced through him. But he didn't move. "Come with me," he said suddenly, surprising even himself. "Let me help." Emily's jaw clenched. "I don't need your help." "Emily." Ethan's voice softened, his eyes flickering to the two little girls huddled close to her. "They do." Emily flinched. She wanted to refuse, to tell him to walk away and never look back. But the truth was, her babies were freezing, their tiny bodies trembled against her. And she had nothing, nowhere safe to go. No food, no warm place to rest. The weight of her pride felt unbearably heavy. But her daughter's well-being mattered more. Tears burned the corners of her eyes as she finally nodded. Just once. It was barely perceptible, but Ethan saw it. "Come on," he said gently, stepping aside and gesturing toward his car. Emily hesitated, but as Sophie whimpered against her shoulder, she forced herself to move. With slow, uncertain steps, she followed Ethan toward the luxury vehicle, the stark contrast between their worlds never feeling more obvious. The car's warmth wrapped around them the moment they stepped inside, and Emily exhaled shakily, overwhelmed by the sudden comfort. She pulled her daughters closer, tucking them beneath her coat as they leaned against her. Exhausted, Ethan watched her in the dim lighting of the car, his mind racing. The Emily he had known was strong, full of life, always smiling. But now she looked like a ghost of the girl he once loved. Neither of them spoke during the drive. Emily kept her gaze fixed on the city lights outside, refusing to acknowledge the man beside her. Ethan, on the other hand, stole glances at her, at the two little girls, his thoughts tangled in a whirlwind of questions. As they approached his estate, Emily finally turned to him. This isn't forever. Ethan, just one night." Ethan met her eyes, something resolute settling in his chest. "We'll see." Emily wanted to argue, but exhaustion weighed her down too heavily. As the car pulled through the iron gates of the Montgomery estate, she braced herself. This wasn't her world. It never had been, and it never would be. She just had to survive this night. For her daughters. But deep down, a terrifying realization crept into her heart. Nothing would ever be the same again. Session 2. A stranger in a world of luxury. The car ride to Ethan's estate was silent except for the occasional sniffles of Sophie and Lily, who were still drowsy from exhaustion. Emily, sitting stiffly in the backseat, clutched them tightly, her mind racing with unease. The warmth inside the car should have been comforting, but instead, it made her more aware of how much she didn't belong. The scent of leather seats, the faint cologne on Ethan's coat, everything reminded her of a life that was no longer hers. As they pulled up to the grand estate, the sheer size of the mansion made Emily's stomach twist. Towering pillars lined the front entrance. Massive chandeliers glowed from within, and the perfectly manicured driveway was so pristine that she hesitated before stepping out, feeling like she might dirty it. "Come inside," Ethan said softly, stepping out of the car and holding the door open for her. Emily hesitated. Every instinct told her to turn around, to walk away and never look back. She had spent years surviving on her own, and now, standing before the man who had once been her whole world, she felt unbearably vulnerable. But then she looked at her daughters. Lily rubbed her tiny fists against her eyes, her cheeks still pink from the cold. Sophie rested her head against Emily's chest, barely awake. They needed this, even if it was temporary, even if it was just for one night. They deserved to be warm. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car. As they entered the house, the warmth immediately enveloped them. The foyer was grand, with polished marble floors, high ceilings, and intricate artwork lining the walls. A fireplace crackled in the distance, sending a golden glow across the room. It was a stark contrast to the freezing streets they had just left behind. "Let me show you to a room where you can rest," Ethan offered. Emily nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. She followed him upstairs, her grip on the twins tightening. A maid, dressed in a neatly pressed uniform, opened the door to a lavish guest room. The sight of a large bed, thick blankets, and a soft rug nearly brought tears to Emily's eyes. She set Sophie and Lily down on the bed gently. Almost instantly, they curled up into the plush mattress, their tiny bodies sinking into the warmth. "They must be exhausted," Ethan murmured, standing by the doorway. Emily didn't answer. Instead, she knelt beside the bed, brushing strands of hair from Sophie's forehead. For years, she had dreamed of a night where they wouldn't have to sleep on the cold ground, where she wouldn't have to hold them close to keep them warm. But now that it was happening, fear gnawed at her. "I'll have some food brought up," Ethan said. "No." Emily's voice came out sharper than she intended. She turned to look at him, eyes wary. "We'll be gone in the morning." Ethan's expression darkened. "Emily, you don't have to." "I do." She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "I don't belong here." "Ethan." His jaw clenched. "This isn't about belonging. It's about making sure you and the girls are safe." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Safe? In a house like this?" She gestured around the room. "You don't understand. I've spent years fighting for every scrap of food, every bit of warmth for my daughters. And now, I'm just supposed to accept this kindness from someone who once left me behind." Ethan flinched as if she had struck him. "I didn't know," he said, his voice tight with something close to regret. "If I had. But you didn't." Emily cut in, "And I learned not to expect anything from anyone." Ethan's eyes softened. "Emily, I want to help." She shook her head. "Tonight is enough." A long silence stretched between them. Then, Ethan sighed. "At least let them sleep. We'll talk in the morning." Emily didn't respond. She simply turned her back to him, sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to the steady breathing of her daughters. Ethan lingered a moment longer before stepping out, closing the door softly behind him. **** an unfamiliar kindness. When Emily awoke the next morning, the scent of fresh bread and warm butter filled the air. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was. The bed beneath her was too soft, the room too quiet. Then she turned her head and saw Sophie and Lily still fast asleep, curled beneath thick blankets, and reality came crashing back. She sat up quickly, her pulse racing. The sun streamed through the window, casting golden light across the room. For the first time in years, she had slept without waking up in a panic. The door creaked open, and a woman stepped inside, a housekeeper. Judging by her uniform, she carried a tray with food and set it on the bedside table. "Mr. Montgomery asked me to bring this up for you and the little ones." Emily hesitated. She had spent so long refusing charity, clinging to her pride, that the idea of accepting help, even something as simple as breakfast, felt foreign. But then her stomach growled, and she thought of her daughters. Lily stirred first, blinking sleepily at the tray. "Mommy, food?" she murmured. Emily swallowed her hesitation and picked up a slice of toast. "Yes, sweetheart, eat." The twins eagerly reached for the food, their small hands clutching at pieces of warm bread and fruit. Emily watched them, feeling a lump rise in her throat. They were too young to understand the gravity of their situation. For them, this was just a nice morning, a rare moment of comfort. She glanced toward the door, half expecting Ethan to be standing there, watching, but he wasn't. A part of her felt relieved. Another part felt something else. She didn't want to owe him anything, but deep down, she knew that Ethan Montgomery was not a man who would let them leave so easily. And that terrified her more than anything. Session 3. A past that refuses to stay buried. Emily sat stiffly on the edge of the grand bed, watching as Sophie and Lily finished their breakfast with delighted little hums. The way they devoured the food broke her heart. She had tried her best, but it had been far too long since they had eaten a proper meal. She should have felt relieved. They were warm, they were fed, and at least for now, they were safe. But Emily's mind wouldn't stop racing. Ethan Montgomery. Just the sound of his name in her head sent a shiver down her spine. She had spent years burying the memories, forcing herself not to think about the love they had once shared, about the promises that had crumbled, about the day he had walked away, leaving her behind with nothing but heartbreak. Now, after all these years, fate had thrown them together in the most brutal of circumstances. Her fingers tightened into a fist. She couldn't let this continue. As if summoned by her thoughts, there was a soft knock at the door before it opened. Ethan stood there, his frame filling the doorway, his presence as imposing as ever. He had changed out of the suit he had been wearing the night before, now dressed in a simple gray sweater and dark jeans. Looking effortlessly put together, Emily hated that a part of her still found him devastatingly handsome. "You're awake," Ethan said, stepping inside. She swallowed, steeling herself. "Yes, and we'll be leaving soon." Ethan sighed, as if he had expected that answer. He glanced at the girls, who were still preoccupied with their food. Then back at her. "Can we talk? Alone?" Emily hesitated, glancing at the twins. She didn't want to leave them alone in this house. But she also didn't want to have this conversation in front of them. Ethan seemed to understand. "We can sit in the lounge down the hall. It's just for a few minutes." With reluctance, Emily nodded. She kissed Sophie and Lily on their foreheads, whispering that she'd be right back. Then followed Ethan out of the room. A conversation years in the making. The lounge was just as extravagant as the rest of the house, floor-to-ceiling windows, elegant furniture, and a fireplace crackling in the corner. Emily chose the farthest seat from Ethan, keeping as much distance between them as possible. Ethan studied her for a moment before breaking the silence. "Emily, what happened?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You want me to summarize 6 years of pain in one conversation?" He ran a hand through his hair. Frustrated. "I need to understand. How did you end up out there?" Emily clenched her jaw. She didn't want to go into details. She didn't want to relive the worst years of her life. But she also knew that Ethan wouldn't let it go. She exhaled slowly. "After you left, things weren't easy. I was fine at first. I had a job. I had a place to stay. But then I met Ryan." Ethan's eyes darkened at the mention of another man. Emily ignored it and continued. "At first, he was charming. I thought he loved me. And when I got pregnant, I believed we would be a family." She swallowed. "But I was wrong. When he found out I was carrying twins, he walked away without looking back." Ethan's hands tightened into fists. "He left you?" She nodded. "I was alone. I lost my job, my apartment, and then, life just kept getting harder." Ethan's face twisted with something between anger and guilt. "Emily, why didn't you?" "What?" She interrupted. "Call you? Ask for help?" She shook her head. "You don't get to ask that." "Ethan, you left first." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "You know why I left." Emily scoffed. "Do I? Because I remember begging you to stay. And you walked away anyway." For a moment, Ethan looked like he wanted to argue. But then he sighed, rubbing his temple. "I thought I was doing the right thing. My father." "Your father?" Emily let out a hollow laugh. "Ah, yes. Charles Montgomery. The man who always thought I wasn't good enough for you." Ethan's expression hardened. "You don't know what he's capable of." Emily crossed her arms. "I know exactly what he's capable of." The room fell silent. For years, Emily had thought about this moment. About what she would say if she ever saw Ethan again. And now, sitting here, all she felt was exhaustion. "I don't need your pity, Ethan," she finally said. "We survived. We don't need saving." Ethan studied her, his gaze unreadable. Then he said, "What about them?" She stiffened. He leaned forward. "Emily, it's not just you anymore. It's Sophie and Lily. Do you really want them sleeping on the streets again?" Her stomach twisted. "Don't you dare make this about them." "But it is about them," Ethan said firmly. "You're their mother. But you don't have to do this alone." Emily swallowed hard. "I have been doing it alone. Since the day they were born. And I respect that." Ethan's voice softened. "But now I'm here. And I want to help." She looked away, blinking back tears. She hated this. Hated how easily he could slip through the cracks of the walls she had built. After a long pause, she said, "I won't stay here, Ethan." His jaw tightened. "Then where will you go?" She didn't have an answer. Ethan leaned back, exhaling. "I don't expect you to trust me overnight. But let me at least help you get back on your feet. A safe place to stay. A way to start over. For them." Emily's throat burned. She hated that he was making sense. Hated that a part of her wanted to accept his offer. But she wasn't sure if she could afford to believe in him again. After what felt like an eternity, she whispered, "I'll think about it." Ethan nodded, though he didn't look satisfied. "That's all I ask." Emily turned away, pressing a hand to her chest as if to steady her heart. She wasn't sure what scared her more, that Ethan wanted to help, or that a part of her wanted to let him. Session 4. A family divided, the Montgomery resistance. Emily stood outside the guest room door, pressing her forehead against the wooden frame. Her mind swirled with everything Ethan had said. She had expected him to offer pity, maybe a bit of guilt-ridden charity. But he had offered something more, something she wasn't sure she could accept. A fresh start. A second chance. But could she trust him? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sharp, clipped voice of a man down the hall. I assume you've completely lost your mind. Emily froze. That voice. She recognized it even after all these years. Charles Montgomery. The man who had destroyed everything. The cold hand of the past. Emily barely had time to brace herself before Charles Montgomery strode into view. Time had barely touched him, his tailored black suit, his salt and pepper hair, his sharp, assessing eyes. The years had done nothing to soften his cruel, calculating expression. Ethan stood his ground, his jaw tight. Father. Charles didn't even spare Ethan a glance before his cold gaze settled on Emily. I see we have company. His tone dripped with disdain. His eyes flickered over her disheveled clothes, the exhaustion written across her face. I assume you weren't invited. Emily's fingers curled into fists, but she forced herself to stay composed. She had promised herself long ago that she would never let Charles Montgomery intimidate her again. I was. Ethan interjected sharply. I brought her and the girls here. Charles scoffed. Of course you did. You always did have a habit of picking up strays. Emily felt a sharp stab of humiliation, but she refused to let it show. Ethan's expression darkened. She's not a stray, and those girls are her daughters. They needed help. They needed help, Charles repeated, his voice dripping with mockery. And you think the answer is bringing them here? Into our home? He let out a slow, deliberate breath before turning his gaze back to Emily. Tell me, Emily, what exactly is your plan? To manipulate Ethan into feeling sorry for you? To leech off him until you can find another fool to take care of you? Emily's body stiffened. This wasn't new. This was the same venom Charles had spewed years ago when he had found out she and Ethan had been in love. The same words, the same accusations, only now. The circumstances were far worse. And she had no defense. Because in Charles Montgomery's world, being poor was the ultimate crime. Before Emily could form a response, Ethan stepped forward, his body tense with anger. Enough. Charles arched a brow. Enough? Yes. Enough of this. Ethan's voice was steel. You don't get to stand here and act like you have the moral high ground. Emily is here because she has nowhere else to go. Because no one else helped her when she needed it. Charles folded his arms, unfazed. And that makes it your problem? She's not a problem. Ethan snapped. She's a person. And I'm not going to throw her and her children out on the street just to appease your warped sense of superiority. Charles sighed, rubbing his temple as if dealing with a difficult child. Ethan, he said coolly, I have tolerated your reckless behavior for years. I turned a blind eye when you wasted your time chasing this girl in college. I let you go when you insisted on running your own business instead of taking over Montgomery Enterprises. But this? He gestured toward Emily with thinly veiled contempt. This is a mistake you won't recover from. Emily clenched her jaw. If my presence is such an inconvenience, we'll leave. Ethan immediately turned to her. No, you won't. Emily flinched at the intensity of his voice. Charles chuckled dryly. Ah, I see. You really think you can save her? Ethan's fists tightened. This isn't about saving anyone. It's about doing the right thing. Charles shook his head, his lips curling into a smirk. You always were naive. An ultimatum. Emily had heard enough. She took a steady breath and met Charles Montgomery's gaze head on. I don't need your approval, Mr. Montgomery. I never did, and I certainly won't stay where I'm not wanted. Charles stared at her for a long moment, before finally sighing in exasperation. Then why are you still here? Emily's stomach twisted. He was right. What was she still doing here? She turned to Ethan, ready to insist that they leave. But before she could, Ethan spoke first. Because she belongs here. The words sent a shockwave through Emily. Charles let out a sharp laugh. Oh, that's rich. I mean it. Ethan's voice was unwavering. She belongs here. And if you can't accept that, he exhaled sharply. Then maybe I don't belong here either. Silence. For the first time, Charles looked truly taken aback. Careful, son, Charles warned, his voice low. You don't want to say something you'll regret. But Ethan didn't waver. For once, he said quietly, I don't think I will. Charles studied him for a long moment before shaking his head. You're a fool. And you're a coward. Charles's gaze darkened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. A heavy silence settled in the room after he left. Emily let out a shaky breath. "Ethan?" He turned to her, his face unreadable. "I'm sorry." She blinked. "For what?" "For everything. For what my father just said. For what happened years ago. For not being there when you needed me most." Emily swallowed hard. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But trust wasn't something she could afford to give away so easily anymore. So instead of responding, she simply said, "I need to check on Sophie and Lily." Ethan nodded, though something flickered in his gaze, something that looked suspiciously like disappointment. Emily turned and walked back toward the guest room, her heart heavy with too many emotions to name. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But one thing was certain. She would not let Charles Montgomery dictate her fate ever again. Session 5. The Battle for Custody, A Father's Betrayal. The next morning, Emily sat by the large window in the guest room, watching Lily and Sophie play on the plush carpet. The warmth of the house was a stark contrast to the biting cold of the streets they had known for so long. Yet, despite the comfort, unease twisted in her chest. She had barely slept, not because of the unfamiliarity of the luxurious surroundings, but because of the conversation from the night before. Charles Montgomery had made it clear, she and her daughters were not welcome here. And though Ethan had defended her, she knew that his father was not the type of man to back down easily. Her worst fears were confirmed when Ethan entered the room, his face grim. "Emily, we have a problem." She stiffened, her hands instinctively reaching for her daughters. "What is it?" Ethan hesitated before handing her a neatly folded envelope. "It's from Ryan." Emily's breath hitched. She ripped the envelope open, her hands trembling as she scanned the document. A petition for custody. Her heart pounded as she read the words over and over again, her mind refusing to process them. Ryan wanted custody of Lily and Sophie. Her voice shook. This can't be real." Ethan sat beside her. "It is." Emily's grip tightened on the papers. "He's never wanted them before. He left us. He never cared. Why now?" Ethan's expression darkened. "Because someone's backing him." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. "Charles." Ethan nodded. "I'd bet my life on it." Emily shot up from the couch, pacing the room. "I can't lose them. Ethan, I won't. Ryan is dangerous. He doesn't want them. He just wants control. He wants to punish me." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then we fight." She turned to him, eyes wild with fear. "I don't have money for lawyers. I don't even have a permanent address." Her voice cracked. "I'm going to lose my daughters." Ethan grasped her shoulders. "No, you won't." His voice was firm. "I'm going to help you." Emily searched his face, desperation clawing at her. "Why?" "Because I should have been there for you before," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "And I won't make that mistake again." The threat of Ryan. Later that day, Emily sat stiffly across from Ryan in a downtown cafe, her hands balled into fists beneath the table. He looked as smug as ever, his suit pressed, his dark eyes gleaming with confidence. "You got my letter," he said smoothly, taking a sip of his coffee. Emily's stomach churned. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan leaned back, studying her. "Because they're my daughters. You don't even know them." She spat. "You walked away. You abandoned us." Ryan smirked. "And yet, legally, I still have rights. You, on the other hand." He gestured to her disheveled clothes, the faint signs of exhaustion lining her face. "You don't exactly scream, fit mother." Emily's nails dug into her palms. "You don't want them. You just want to hurt me." Ryan shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just don't think a homeless woman should be raising 2 kids." Her stomach twisted in rage. "You don't get to decide that." Ryan leaned forward, his smirk turning cruel. "Actually, Emily, I do. And with the right lawyers, I will." Emily's breath shuddered. "Who's paying for them?" Ryan chuckled. "Does it matter?" The confirmation was enough. "Charles." Ryan stood, adjusting his tie. "I'll see you in court." A legal battle begins. Back at the Montgomery estate, Ethan was already speaking with his lawyer, Michael Carter, when Emily stormed in. "I met with him," she announced, her voice shaking. "He's serious, and I think Charles is funding him." Michael nodded. "That's likely." He tapped the papers in front of him. "Ryan is arguing that you're an unfit mother due to your history of homelessness and lack of financial stability." Emily swallowed hard. "And how do I fight that?" Michael looked at Ethan. "We prove that you're capable of providing a safe, loving environment, We need to establish stability, employment, a place to live, and character references. Emily hesitated. I don't have a job. I don't have a home. Ethan spoke up. We'll find a way. Michael studied them both before nodding. Ryan has a strong case. But he has a history of gambling, questionable financial dealings, and we might be able to prove that his sudden interest in custody is more about revenge than genuine parental concern. Emily exhaled shakily. What are our chances? Michael hesitated. It's going to be an uphill battle. Doubt and fear. That night, Emily stood outside on the balcony, looking up at the sky. The stars shone brightly, indifferent to the chaos of her life. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Ethan. You okay? He asked. Emily gave a hollow laugh. No. Ethan stepped beside her. We're going to win this. Emily shook her head. You don't know that. She looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Do you have any idea what it's like to live every single day in fear that someone will take your children away? To have to fight for the right to keep them when you're the only one who has ever truly loved them? Ethan's face was unreadable. Then, quietly, he said, I don't, but I know what it's like to lose someone you love and realize too late that you should have fought harder for them. Something in his voice made Emily's breath hitch. Let me help you, he murmured. For the first time in years, Emily wanted to believe that she wasn't fighting alone. But trust was a dangerous thing, and she wasn't sure she had the strength to risk it again. Session 6. Fighting for Lily and Sophie, the battle against the system. The weight of the upcoming legal battle settled heavily on Emily's shoulders. She sat in the living room of the Montgomery estate, staring blankly at the legal documents Michael had prepared. The clock was ticking, and in just a few days, she would have to stand in court and prove that she was worthy of keeping her daughters. Ethan entered the room, his expression unreadable. I found a place for you and the girls, he said. Emily looked up sharply. A place? Ethan nodded. It's a small townhouse, not far from here. I bought it for you. Her breath hitched. Ethan, I can't. Yes, you can, he interrupted firmly. You need stability, and a permanent address will strengthen your case. You don't have to pay me back. Just let me do this. Emily searched his face, looking for hidden motives, but all she saw was sincerity. After a long silence, she whispered, Thank you. The first court hearing. 2 days later, Emily walked into the courtroom, her hands trembling at her sides. She squeezed Lily and Sophie's hands, whispering reassurances to them before leaving them with a social worker outside. Inside, Ryan was already seated at his lawyer's table, looking smug and confident. Emily's stomach turned. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Ryan's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we are here to establish that Mr. Ryan Bennett, the biological father of Lily and Sophie, is more suited to provide for them. Ms. Emily Parker, while well-meaning, has lived in unstable conditions for years and has struggled financially. Mr. Bennett, on the other hand, has a steady income and a home. Emily flinched at the lawyer's words, but she held her head high. Michael rose to his feet. Your Honor, my client has done everything in her power to protect and provide for her children. Despite extreme circumstances, she has recently secured stable housing and is actively seeking employment. Moreover, we have reason to believe that Mr. Bennett's sudden interest in custody is not out of paternal concern but motivated by other external factors. The judge eyed Ryan. Mr. Bennett, why are you suddenly interested in custody now? You abandoned the mother of your children years ago. Ryan cleared his throat. I made mistakes, Your Honor. I regret them, and I want to be part of my daughters' lives now. Emily wanted to scream. He was lying through his teeth. Michael stepped forward. Your Honor, we request time to present further evidence that Mr. Bennett's petition is being financially backed by a third party with questionable motives. The judge nodded. I will review the provided documentation and set a follow-up hearing in 2 weeks. As the court adjourned, Emily exhaled shakily. Ethan squeezed her hand. We'll prove he's lying. She nodded, but doubt lingered. Ryan's dirty tactics. That evening, Emily received a call from Michael. We have a problem, he said grimly. Her stomach twisted. What is it? Ryan's team is using your past against you. They found out about your arrest years ago. Emily felt like the ground beneath her had been ripped away. I was desperate. She whispered. I stole food for my daughters. It was a mistake, but I had no choice. Michael's voice was calm but firm. I know, and we'll fight it. But they're going to use it to paint you as an unfit mother." Tears burned her eyes. "This isn't fair." "I know," Michael said softly, "but we have to stay ahead of them." The media storm. The next day, the media got hold of the custody case. Headlines splashed across news sites. Homeless mother with criminal past battles for custody against stable father. Emily's hands trembled as she read the article. Ethan stormed into the room. "I'm shutting this down," he said, his voice laced with fury. "You can't control the media," Emily said weakly. "No, but I can make sure they hear your side." Ethan shot back. "We're going public with the truth." Emily hesitated. "And what if it backfires?" Ethan looked at her, unwavering. "Then we fight harder." A glimmer of hope. That evening, Ethan arranged for Emily to tell her story through a well-respected journalist. In an exclusive interview, Emily spoke about her struggles, her love for her daughters, and the sacrifices she had made. The next morning, the headline had changed. "A Mother's Love: The True Story Behind Emily Parker's Fight for Her Daughters." Public opinion shifted. People began seeing Emily not as a criminal, but as a mother who had done everything in her power to protect her children. When Emily read the comments of strangers offering support, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. As she looked at her sleeping daughters, she knew one thing for sure: she was going to fight like hell to keep them. Session 7. The Betrayal Unveiled, A Father's Deception. The air in Ethan's office was thick with tension. He stood by the large window, staring at the city lights, fists clenched at his sides. Across the room, Michael sat at his desk, flipping through pages of evidence they had just uncovered. The truth was worse than they had anticipated. Charles Montgomery, Ethan's own father, was funding Ryan's legal battle. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He had suspected his father's involvement, but seeing the bank records, the financial transactions linking Charles to Ryan, made his blood boil. He had spent years trying to prove he was nothing like the ruthless businessman who had shaped his childhood. And now, his own father was actively working against the woman he was trying to protect. "This is it," Michael said, looking up from the documents. "This is our proof. Ryan isn't doing this out of love for his daughters. He's a pawn." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to contain his fury. "My father thinks he can manipulate me into walking away from Emily. He thinks if she's out of the picture, I'll go back to being the son he wants me to be." Michael sighed. "Are you ready to confront him?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "I should have done it sooner." Confrontation with Charles Montgomery. Ethan stormed into his father's office without knocking. Charles was seated at his grand mahogany desk, calm as ever, as if he had been expecting this. "Ethan," Charles greeted smoothly, setting down a glass of whiskey. "I assume you're here about Emily." Ethan slammed the bank records onto the desk. "You're paying Ryan to take her children away. How could you stoop this low?" Charles sighed, picking up the papers lazily. "I'm doing what's necessary. That woman doesn't belong in our world. She's a liability." Ethan's hands curled into fists. "She's the mother of 2 little girls. Dad, she's not a threat to you. But you're treating her like one." Charles leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "You're a Montgomery. Your life is already set for you. The last thing you need is some homeless woman and her baggage dragging you down." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "She's not baggage. She's a survivor. She's the strongest person I've ever met. And unlike you, she actually cares about something other than money and power." Charles's expression darkened. "And what about you, Ethan? Are you willing to throw everything away for her? For someone who lived on the streets?" Ethan met his father's gaze without hesitation. "Yes." His voice was unwavering. "And if you don't back off, I'll make sure the world knows exactly what kind of man you really are." Charles's lips pressed into a thin line. "You wouldn't." Ethan took a step closer. "Try me." For the first time, Charles looked uncertain. "This ends now," Ethan said, his voice firm. "You will withdraw all financial support from Ryan. You will stay out of Emily's life. And if you ever try to manipulate me like this again, you'll lose me for good." Charles exhaled slowly, then gave a slight nod. "Fine, but don't come crawling back when she ruins you." Ethan didn't bother responding. He turned on his heel and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Emily's breaking point. Meanwhile, Emily sat in her temporary townhouse, staring at the legal documents spread out before her. The custody hearing was in 3 days, and the pressure was suffocating. Ethan had been fighting for her, standing by her side despite everything. but she couldn't shake the fear clawing at her chest. What if she lost? What if Ryan won custody? She had already lost so much, she couldn't bear to lose her daughters. 2. A knock at the door startled her. She hurried to open it, expecting Ethan, but instead, she found Ryan standing there, smirking. "What do you want?" she asked. Immediately defensive, Ryan stepped inside without waiting for permission. "You really think you stand a chance, don't you?" he sneered. "But let's be real, Emily. You're a homeless single mother with a criminal record. The courts will eat you alive." Emily's stomach twisted, but she refused to back down. "I won't let you take them from me." Ryan chuckled darkly. "Oh, I already have. This is just a formality." He leaned in. "Unless, of course, you make it easy on yourself." Emily narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" Ryan shrugged. "Walk away. Give me full custody, and I'll make sure you get something out of it. Money, maybe even a place to stay. Play nice, and I'll make sure you're taken care of." Emily's hands trembled with anger. "I'd rather live on the streets for the rest of my life than let you anywhere near my daughters." Ryan's smirk faded. "You really want to do this the hard way?" Emily's voice was steady. "Get out." Ryan scoffed, turning toward the door. "Your loss." The moment the door shut behind him, Emily collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She had never felt so terrified, so powerless. She needed to win this case. She needed to protect Lily and Sophie, no matter what it took. A desperate plea for help. That night, Ethan found Emily sitting outside on the porch, staring into the night. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "I can't lose them, Ethan." He sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "You won't." She shook her head. "Ryan is ruthless. He doesn't love them. He just wants to win. And the courts, they look at my past and see a failure." Ethan cupped her face gently, forcing her to look at him. "You are not a failure, Emily. You're the most incredible mother I've ever met. And we're going to prove it." She swallowed hard. "How?" Ethan exhaled. "We have something Ryan doesn't. The truth. And I just cut off his biggest advantage, my father." Emily's eyes widened. "What?" "I confronted him," Ethan admitted. "He's out. No more funding Ryan's case. No more interference." Emily felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by fear. "That won't stop Ryan." "No," Ethan agreed, "but it gives us the upper hand. And I have a plan." Emily hesitated. "What kind of plan?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "We dig deeper. Ryan's hiding something, and I'm going to find out what it is." Emily's heart pounded. "And if there's nothing to find?" Ethan met her gaze. "Then we fight harder." Emily exhaled shakily. She had spent so long fighting alone. But now, she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could win. Session 8. The turning point, exposing Ryan's dark secrets. The night was restless. Emily tossed and turned in bed, her mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. The impending court battle loomed over her like a storm cloud. But now, there was something else, hope. Ethan's unwavering support, his determination to fight for her and the girls, was a light she hadn't dared to believe in for so long. Downstairs, Ethan and Michael were deep in conversation, poring over documents and leads that could help their case. Ethan had called in favors, hired private investigators, and spent hours tracking Ryan's financials, looking for any sign of weakness. He knew men like Ryan, arrogant, entitled, and always hiding something, and if there was anything that could tilt the case in Emily's favor, Ethan was determined to find it. Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. "We know Ryan has been receiving money from your father. But with Charles pulling out, that's a dead end. We need something bigger." Ethan's jaw clenched. There has to be something. A man like Ryan doesn't suddenly reappear after abandoning his children unless he has an agenda. Just then, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was one of his private investigators. "Greg, I've got something," Greg said, "and you're going to want to see it in person." Ethan didn't waste time. Within the hour, he was sitting in Greg's office, staring at a stack of photos and documents laid out before him. His stomach turned as he took in the evidence. Ryan was drowning in debt, gambling, unpaid loans, shady business dealings. He was in trouble. Serious trouble. And what was worse, he had been using his connection to Charles Montgomery to secure loans under false pretenses. Ethan's blood boiled. This wasn't just about hurting Emily. Ryan was using the girls as leverage. He didn't want custody out of love. He wanted a bargaining chip. Something he could use to squeeze more money out of Charles or force Emily into submission. Greg leaned forward. There's more. We found proof that Ryan has been in and out of underground poker clubs. Some of these guys aren't just casual gamblers. They're the type who don't take kindly to unpaid debts. Ethan exhaled sharply. Can we use this in court? Greg nodded. Absolutely. A man with massive debts, shady dealings, and no financial stability? There's no way a judge would grant him custody. Ethan didn't waste a second. He grabbed the files, called Michael, and raced back home. This was it. This was their leverage. A mother's strength and a final confrontation. Emily sat at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of tea, trying to steady her nerves when Ethan burst through the door. We got him, he said breathlessly, tossing the documents onto the table. Emily's brows furrowed as she scanned through the pages. The deeper she read, the more her hands trembled. He's using them, my daughters, as a way to get money. Ethan's expression softened. I won't let him take them. Emily. She took a shaky breath. We need to show this to my lawyer. Michael nodded. We'll file the motion first thing in the morning. But Emily, this isn't just leverage in court. This is something we can use against Ryan directly. Emily's eyes darkened. What do you mean? Michael hesitated. If Ryan realizes he's cornered, if he knows he'll lose in court, he might be willing to back down before the hearing even happens. Emily processed the idea. Confronting Ryan was the last thing she wanted to do. But if it meant protecting Lily and Sophie, she would do anything. Later that evening, Ethan arranged a meeting with Ryan at a neutral location, a private lounge Ethan owned. When Ryan arrived, his usual smug demeanor was intact. But the moment he saw Ethan's serious expression and the folder in his hand, his confidence wavered. What is this, Montgomery? Ryan scoffed. More threats? You think money can fix everything? Ethan slid the documents across the table. Read. Ryan hesitated but eventually picked up the pages. As his eyes scanned the evidence, his unpaid debts, illegal gambling activities, and the fraudulent loans, his face paled. You're finished, Ethan said, his voice calm but laced with finality. If you go to court, you will not only lose, but this information will become public. Your reputation will be destroyed. And those people you owe money to? I doubt they'll be pleased to know their investments were built on lies. Ryan clenched his jaw. You think you can blackmail me? Ethan leaned forward. This isn't blackmail. Ryan, it's reality. You never wanted those girls. You wanted control. You wanted money. But here's the deal. Drop your custody claim. Sign over full parental rights to Emily, and walk away. If you do that, we won't take this to court. We won't let the whole world see what kind of man you really are. Ryan's hands tightened into fists, his pride warring with his fear. He had no real choice. And he knew it. Ethan sat back. Or, you can fight, and I promise you, you will lose everything. Silence stretched between them. Then, with a frustrated growl, Ryan grabbed the pen Ethan slid toward him and scrawled his signature on the papers. It's done, he spat. You happy now? Ethan took the documents, verifying every signature. He nodded. You made the right choice. Ryan glared at him but didn't say another word before storming out. Victory in the face of darkness. When Ethan returned home that night, Emily was pacing in the living room, worry etched across her face. The moment she saw him holding the signed papers, she froze. It's over, Ethan said softly. Emily rushed forward, scanning the documents. As realization dawned, tears welled in her eyes. He's gone? Ethan nodded. He signed away his rights. He can't touch them ever again. A sob of relief escaped her lips as she sank into Ethan's arms. He held her tightly, his own heart pounding. This battle was finally over. Emily pulled back, looking up at him with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. You don't have to. I did what was right. For you. For them. Emily searched his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that she and her daughters were safe. That night, for the first time in a long time, Emily slept without fear. Session 9. Ethan's redemption and Emily's dilemma, choosing to trust again. The morning after Ryan's departure was unlike any other. For the first time in years, Emily woke up without the weight of fear crushing her chest. She stretched, savoring the rare feeling of security. But as she glanced at the empty space in her bed, the walls of doubt began creeping back. Was this truly over? Could she allow herself to believe in a future free from running? From constantly looking over her shoulder? Down the hall, the sound of giggles echoed. Sophie and Lily were awake. Emily smiled, stepping toward their room, and found them in the middle of the bed, pillows surrounding them like a fortress. "Mommy," Sophie grinned, "we had a sleepover in a real bed." Emily chuckled, sitting on the edge. "You'll be sleeping in a real bed every night now." "Sweetheart." Lily tilted her head. "Forever?" Emily hesitated. The word felt so fragile in her world. Forever had never been guaranteed. But for the first time, it didn't seem impossible. "I hope so," she whispered, stroking their hair. Just then, a soft knock came from the doorway. Ethan stood there, dressed casually, looking hesitant yet hopeful. "Breakfast is ready," he said. "I thought we could all eat together." Sophie and Lily squealed in excitement, hopping off the bed and dashing past Ethan toward the dining room. Emily rose slowly, eyes meeting Ethan's. "You didn't have to do all this," she murmured. Ethan gave a small, almost shy smile. "I wanted to. I don't want you to feel like a guest. Emily, I want this to be home, for you and the girls." His words settled deep within her, a dangerous comfort she wasn't sure she was ready for. She had spent years relying only on herself. Accepting help was one thing. Accepting a place in someone's life was another. Breakfast and unspoken promises. At the dining table, Sophie and Lily were already digging into their pancakes, their faces lighting up with delight. Emily couldn't remember the last time they'd had a breakfast like this, one filled with warmth, laughter, and no gnawing hunger pains. It felt almost normal. As she lifted her fork, her gaze drifted across the table to Ethan. He was watching the girls with a mixture of amusement and something deeper, something Emily had seen before. Years ago, when they were young and in love. It made her heart ache. Ethan caught her staring. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emily set her fork down. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "This." She gestured around. "Being taken care of. Being safe." Ethan leaned forward, voice steady. "You've spent so long fighting alone, Emily. But you don't have to anymore. Let me be here for you." Her throat tightened. "Ethan, I..." Before she could finish, Michael entered the room, clearing his throat. "Hate to interrupt, but we need to talk." Emily tensed, her instincts screaming that the fight wasn't over yet. Ethan frowned, standing. "What is it?" Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's Charles." Emily stiffened, and Ethan's expression darkened instantly. "What did he do now?" Michael exhaled. "He's requesting a meeting. A father's last attempt at control." Ethan clenched his fists as he drove to his father's estate later that afternoon. Emily had insisted on coming along, wanting to face the man who had tried to tear her family apart. They had left the girls under careful supervision, making sure they wouldn't be caught in the crossfire of whatever was about to unfold. As they stepped into the grand Montgomery mansion, the air was thick with tension. Charles sat in his leather armchair, the very picture of wealth and power. But for the first time, he didn't look invincible. There was a weariness in his posture, a rare vulnerability in his gaze. "I assume you're here to apologize," Ethan said coldly. Charles chuckled dryly. "I don't do apologies, son." Emily crossed her arms. "Then why did you ask us here?" Charles took a deep breath, his gaze settling on her. "Because I miscalculated," Ethan scoffed. "That's putting it mildly." His father ignored the remark. "I thought Ryan was the better option. That you were blinded by emotion, making reckless decisions. But I was wrong." The courts ruled in Emily's favor. And there's no undoing that. What's done is done. Emily narrowed her eyes. "You didn't call us here just to admit you were wrong." Charles nodded. "I called you here to make an offer." Ethan stiffened. "What kind of offer?" Charles clasped his hands together. "Come back to the company. Ethan, take your rightful place in the Montgomery empire." Ethan stared at his father in disbelief. "You tried to destroy Emily. You tried to take her children away. And now you want me to just walk back into your world as if nothing happened?" Charles met his gaze evenly. "You're my son, and despite our differences, you belong in that chair. I need you to carry on the family name." Emily felt the heat rise in her chest. "And what about me and my daughters? What happens to us if Ethan agrees?" Charles exhaled. "You can stay. I won't interfere anymore. Consider it a truce." Ethan's fists clenched. He had spent years trying to break free of his father's control. But now the very thing he had once wanted, a place in his legacy, was being handed to him. Yet, the price was still too high. He turned to Emily, who looked at him with guarded eyes, waiting for his answer. Ethan didn't hesitate. "No." Charles's jaw tightened. "Ethan." "No." Ethan repeated firmly. "You don't get to play God with my life anymore. I don't need your money. I don't need your company. And I sure as hell don't need your approval." Emily felt a lump form in her throat at his words. Charles sighed, shaking his head. "You're making a mistake." Ethan laughed bitterly. "No, I'm finally making the right choice." He took Emily's hand and turned away, leading her out of the mansion, leaving behind the life that had once defined him, choosing love over power. The drive back was silent. Emily still hadn't spoken since they left, and Ethan's grip on the steering wheel was tight. He finally exhaled. "Say something." Emily glanced at him. "You walked away from everything." He nodded. "Because none of it mattered if it meant losing you." Her heart clenched. "Ethan, I don't care about the company, the money, or the name. Emily, I care about you. I care about Sophie and Lily. And I want to be part of your life, not because of obligation, but because I love you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "You don't even hesitate." "No," he said simply. "Because when you love someone, you don't hesitate." Emily inhaled shakily, staring at the man who had just walked away from his legacy for her daughters. For the first time, she believed him. For the first time, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be real. Session 10. A family reborn, love, healing, and a new beginning. The air felt different when they returned to the estate. It was lighter, freer, as if a great weight had been lifted from Ethan's shoulders. For so long, his identity had been tied to the Montgomery legacy, to his father's impossible expectations. But tonight, he was free. And not just free, but finally home. Emily sat in the passenger seat, watching him in silence as he pulled into the driveway. His jaw was no longer clenched. His hands relaxed on the wheel. He looked at peace. But could she allow herself to believe in this? He turned to her, sensing her hesitation. "What are you thinking?" Emily exhaled slowly, gripping her hands together. "That this all feels surreal. Too good to be true." Ethan reached over, gently taking her hand in his. "It's real, Emily. I promise you, it's real." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But years of disappointment, of being let down, had built walls around her heart. Could she risk tearing them down? Before she could speak, the front door burst open. "Mommy." Sophie and Lily's voices rang through the night as they ran out, their tiny feet barely making a sound against the pavement. Emily smiled, bending down to embrace them as they threw their arms around her. She held them close, breathing in their warmth, their innocence. No matter what fears she carried, no matter what doubts still lingered, these two were the only certainty she had ever known. Ethan crouched beside them, ruffling Lily's hair. "Hey, did you two behave while we were gone?" Lily giggled. "Michael gave us ice cream before dinner." Ethan shot Michael a mock glare as the man leaned against the doorway with a smirk. "Traitor." Michael shrugged. "They deserved it. Plus, I figured you'd want a little celebration. This is the first night in a long time where no one's coming after Emily or the kids." Emily's breath hitched. The words were true, but it still felt strange to hear them. No more Ryan. No more Charles. No more running. Was she allowed to believe in peace? A night of honesty. Later that evening, after the girls had been tucked into bed, Emily found herself standing on the balcony, staring at the night sky. The stars blinked above, endless and vast, a stark contrast to the confined life she had lived for so long. She heard Ethan approach before she saw him. He stepped beside her, leaning against the railing. "Penny, for your thoughts?" She smiled faintly. "I don't know. Everything just feels too calm. I don't remember the last time I felt this way." He nodded, understanding. It's hard to accept peace when you've lived in survival mode for so long. Emily swallowed. "I want to believe in this, Ethan, but I'm scared." Ethan turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Scared of what?" "That this won't last. That one day, you'll wake up and realize you don't want this life. That you don't want us." His brows furrowed. "Emily." She held up a hand, stopping him. "I know you care about us. I know you've done everything to protect me and the girls. But I've been abandoned before. By Ryan, by the world, I can't go through that again." Ethan reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm not Ryan," he said firmly, "and I will never walk away from you." Her chest tightened. "You say that now. But, no." His voice was unwavering. "Not, but, not, if, not, one day. Emily, I chose you. I chose this life. I walked away from everything for you. And I do it again without hesitation." Her eyes stung with tears. "Why?" "Because I love you." The words landed softly between them, sinking into the space where fear had lived for so long. Emily inhaled sharply, her heart pounding. She had dreamt of hearing those words before, but never had she imagined they would come from Ethan again, not after everything. But looking into his eyes, she knew he meant them. She didn't know when she had moved, but suddenly, her lips were on his, desperate, searching, and when he kissed her back, it wasn't just passion, it was devotion. A promise, a new beginning, a proposal from the heart. The following morning, Emily woke up feeling lighter than she had in years. For once, she wasn't waking up on a park bench or in a shelter, worried about how she would feed her daughters. She wasn't running. She wasn't afraid. She was home. As she stretched, she noticed a small envelope on her bedside table with her name written in Ethan's handwriting. Heart pounding, she opened it, revealing a simple note. "Meet me in the garden." Curious, she got dressed and made her way downstairs. The early morning air was crisp, the sunlight filtering through the trees in a soft golden glow. As she turned the corner, she stopped. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. In front of him, a small wooden table was set with breakfast, a vase of fresh flowers in the center. "Ethan?" she asked hesitantly. He smiled, gesturing for her to sit. "I thought we could start the day with something special." She sat, her eyes scanning the setup. "This is beautiful." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Emily, there's something I need to say." She felt her pulse quicken. "Okay." Ethan took a deep breath. "I love you. I love the way you fight for your daughters. The way you never give up. Even when the world has tried to break you. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And I don't just want to help you. I want to build a life with you." Her breath caught. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate but stunning ring. "Emily, I want to spend my life with you and the girls. Not because I feel obligated. Not because I want to rescue you, but because I want to be a part of your world. Will you marry me?" Emily's hands trembled as she covered her mouth, overwhelmed with emotion. For so long, she had built walls to protect herself. But in this moment, she realized, maybe she didn't need them anymore. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Yes." Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, slipping the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms. And for the first time in years, Emily didn't feel like a survivor. She felt like she belonged. She felt loved. She felt home. Epilogue. A new dawn. A few months later, Emily stood before a small gathering in Ethan's garden, Sophie and Lily holding flower crowns, giggling as they placed them on their mother's head. Ethan stood across from her, eyes filled with nothing but love. They had walked through fire, through heartbreak, through trials that had nearly broken them. But now, they stood together, a family. As they exchanged vows, Emily finally understood. Happiness wasn't something to chase. It wasn't something in the distance. It was here. It was now. And she was finally home. Epilogue. The strength of a mother. The power of love. The evening sky was painted in hues of gold and crimson as Emily stood on the back porch of their new home, watching Lily and Sophie chase fireflies in the yard. Their laughter echoed in the crisp air, innocent and free, sounds she had once feared she would never hear again. A soft breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, blending with the distant hum of the world beyond their safe haven. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, breathing in the moment. She had spent so many nights dreaming of a life like this but never believed it could be hers. Never imagined she would stand here, in a home filled with warmth, love, and security. Never thought she would have a partner who saw her, who cherished her, who stood beside her no matter what. But Ethan had changed that. He had changed everything. She felt his presence before she saw him, the warmth of his body close as he stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned into him instinctively, letting his strength steady her. "They're happy," Ethan murmured against her hair. watching their daughters with a soft smile. Emily nodded, her throat tightening. "They are. And you?" he asked, turning her gently to face him, his deep blue eyes searching hers. "Are you happy, Emily?" Her breath caught. For years, she had measured happiness in survival, in making it through one more day. But now, happiness wasn't just a fleeting moment. It wasn't a distant dream. It was here, in the steady beat of Ethan's heart beneath her palm, in the safe walls of the home they had built together, in the laughter of their children. Untethered by fear, she smiled, blinking away the moisture in her eyes. "Yes, Ethan, I'm happy. A love that heals." There had been a time when Emily thought love was just another fairy tale, something that belonged to people who had never suffered the way she had. But she had learned that love wasn't perfect. It wasn't always easy. Real love, the kind that endured, was built in the quiet moments, in the battles fought side by side. It was in the way Ethan never asked her to be anything other than herself, in the way he held her hand when nightmares woke her in the middle of the night, in the way he loved Lily and Sophie as if they had always been his. She looked at him now, this man who had once been just a memory from a life long gone, and realized he had become her future. And she was no longer afraid. Ethan pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Marrying you was the best decision of my life." Emily smiled, resting her head against his chest. "You took a risk on a homeless woman with 2 kids. Montgomery, you're either incredibly brave or incredibly crazy." He chuckled. "Probably both." She laughed softly, the sound light and genuine. "Well, I'm glad you are. The strength of a mother." As the night deepened, Emily walked into the girls' room, where Lily and Sophie lay curled up beneath their blankets. Their breathing was slow and steady, the peaceful rhythm of children who no longer had to be afraid of where they would sleep at night. Emily sat on the edge of their bed, brushing a stray curl from Sophie's forehead. Her daughter stirred slightly, sighing in contentment but not waking. For so long, she had fought with every ounce of strength she had to protect them. She had begged on cold streets. She had sacrificed meals so they wouldn't go hungry. She had endured the humiliation of judgmental stares, the sting of cruel whispers, the heartbreak of feeling invisible. She had done it all for them, and she would do it all again if she had to. Because a mother's love knew no limits. But now, for the first time in years, she could breathe. She didn't have to fight alone anymore. She didn't have to wake up every morning wondering if she could make it through another day. She had a partner, a home, and a future that no longer felt impossible. And her daughters, her precious, beautiful girls, would never have to know the pain of uncertainty again. Emily pressed a kiss to each of their foreheads, then stood, lingering in the doorway for a moment before quietly shutting the door behind her. A new beginning. Back in the living room, Ethan was waiting for her with a glass of wine in his hand. He handed it to her as she curled up beside him on the couch. "To new beginnings?" he asked, raising his own glass. Emily smiled, clinking hers against his. "To new beginnings." As she took a sip, she let the warmth spread through her, not just from the wine but from the realization that for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was living, loving, healing. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She had walked through fire, but she had come out stronger. And now, she had everything she had ever wanted, not in wealth, not in luxury, but in the love that filled the spaces she once thought would always be empty. Outside, the stars sparkled against the dark sky, a silent witness to the journey that had brought her here. She reached for Ethan's hand, intertwining her fingers with his. This was their story, one of loss and redemption, of struggle and triumph, of love that refused to be broken. And as she rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, listening to the quiet hum of the night, she knew their story was just beginning. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Millionaire Love Stories. Have love and resilience ever changed your life? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Subscribe for more stories of love, transformation, and the power of connection. Together, let's believe in the magic of love.